What happens when political arrogance collides with cultural ignorance? You get what just unfolded in Britain. A calculated attempt to tax the lifeblood of rural communities dressed up as a climate policy, and the spectacular implosion of Sir Keir Starmer's credibility. For years, Starmer has worn the mask of moderation, measured, technocratic, quietly competent. But that mask has now slipped, and what lies beneath is far more dangerous, an ideology so obsessed with control and optics that it's willing to criminalize dissent, vilify the backbone of the nation, and weaponize state power against its own citizens. Let's be clear, this was never just about tax reform. When Labour floated the idea of a 20% inheritance tax on farmland valued above £1 million, it didn't just tweak the economic dials of rural Britain. It declared war on the very identity of the countryside. To Starmer and his advisers, most of whom wouldn't know a seed drill from a server rack, this was just another line in a spreadsheet, another fiscal maneuver in the name of green equity. But to thousands of farming families, it was a death sentence. The land isn't just an asset, it's a legacy, a century-spanning commitment to stewardship, tradition, and survival. And this government dared to put a price tag on it. The political fallout was immediate and deserved. Tractors in the streets, produce dumped outside Labour headquarters, farmers, historically reluctant to engage in political theatre, forced into confrontation because silence meant extinction. And how did Labour respond? Not with dialogue, not with empathy, but with force. Peaceful protests were met with police vans. Internal memos, now public, reveal a chilling appetite for surveillance, preemptive arrests, and digital tracking. Protest leaders were quietly reclassified as threats to national order. This wasn't democratic governance. It was a dry run at authoritarianism, the kind that hides behind climate graphs while sending officers to knock on doors. And then came the political reckoning. Nigel Farage, never one to miss a populist pulse, turned a spotlight onto Labour's machinery of control. He didn't just oppose a tax. He named the real issue, economic cleansing, a deliberate squeeze on self-sufficient, land-owning families who don't fit into the progressive urban ideal. Starmer's Labour isn't trying to build a greener future. It's trying to redraw the cultural map, to erase the independent backbone of the nation and replace it with compliant, urban-centric dependency. Farage understood the assignment, and the country listened. What's most damning, though, isn't the rebellion. It's Starmer's unraveling under pressure. On live television, confronted with the evidence, his own memos, the crackdown, the backlash, he blinked, stammered, deflected. He lashed out at farmers, accusing them of being manipulated by extremist rhetoric. In one breath, he painted himself as a reasonable leader of a modern party. In the next, he labeled rural Britain a breeding ground for populist ignorance. It was a catastrophic display of contempt thinly veiled as disappointment. The judiciary didn't buy it. Senior legal figures broke rank to warn that the proposed arrests and surveillance were not only unconstitutional, but an outright abuse of executive power. That's not a policy misstep, that's a systemic threat. When judges start whispering dangerous and illegitimate, we're no longer debating policy. We're debating the survival of constitutional order. This is where the Labour Party must reckon with itself. Starmer was sold to the public as a grown-up, a calm hand after the chaos of Johnson and the fantasy economics of Corbyn. But in his eagerness to appear decisive, he revealed a spine of steel only when facing down his own citizens. He didn't stand up to global corporations, foreign adversaries, or corrupt financial institutions. He stood up to the farmers, to the landowners, to the people who feed the nation, and he used the full weight of government to do it. There's a reason Reform UK is surging. It's not just anger, it's clarity. People now see what's at stake. This isn't about climate versus capitalism. It's about values versus control. Who defines the future? Who gets to call land home? And who decides how much freedom we sacrifice in the name of someone else's agenda? The Green New Deal sounds noble until it becomes a tool of state coercion. And Starmer, for all his soft tones and polished appearances, has shown he's willing to go further than anyone imagined to enforce it. Politics isn't about perfection. It's about trust. And Starmer has burned through his. He tried to criminalize the countryside and now finds himself cornered by political uprising, legal scrutiny, and collapsing internal loyalty. His party looks less like a government in waiting and more like a machine unraveling in real time. The next election won't be a referendum on climate policy. It will be a referendum on power. Who should wield it, how it should be constrained, and whether Britain is still a country where inherited land, hard work, and dissenting voices are protected rather than punished. Starmer made his choice. Now it's time for the country to make theirs.